All right, so right now we're just gonna create a board. Name some characteristics of life for me. Remember, there are 8. You only have to put down 1. Any characteristic of life that you remember. And I hid your name, so don't worry. No one will know if you put the wrong thing. Yes, it does respond to stimuli. Good job. Yes, they do have homeostasis. They like to keep the balance. Good job. They all can reproduce. Yes. They grow and develop. Yes. Yes, they need to reproduce. Ooh, yes, they do have cells. Yes, good job. They contain cells. They do respond to their environment. Yes, they do adapt. Good job. Yes, they do adapt. Yes, they do respond to stimuli. Good job, good job. Reproduction, homeostasis, good job. All right, so we kind of remember, we do remember already the 8 characteristics of life. Great job. So today we're talking about viruses. And in case you don't know what a virus is, I'm going to throw out some movies. Anything with a zombie in it, that's a virus taking over the body. Venom from Spider-Man. Venom has a virus taking over him. What other movies? Any outbreaks? If you've ever seen the movie Outbreak or Contagion, those are viruses that are killing off people. And of course, in the real world right now, we're in a pandemic because of a virus. So that's what we're talking about today, viruses. Then I deleted this one. We're not gonna watch this. All right, so today you're gonna be able to differentiate between viruses and cells, and you're gonna justify why scientists consider viruses as non-living. So we talked about the 8 characteristics of life. Now I'm gonna tell you which one the virus has and does not have. So viruses do not have homeostasis. They have no way to control their internal environment. So they do not maintain homeostasis. They can't control their sugar levels, their salt levels, their water levels. They have no way to keep the balance. They're not organized either. So it's just one level, virus level. That's it. There's no levels on top of that. There's no levels before that. It's just a virus. Humans have levels. We start off with cells, tissues, organs, organ systems. Those are levels of organization, but a virus doesn't have that. It does not have levels. It's just one level virus, that's it. Can't go up, can't go down. A virus can't grow and it can't develop. It cannot change its size. Once it's made, that's it. It stays like that forever. It can't grow, it can't shrink, it can't get fat, it can't get skinny. It just stays as it is. A virus can reproduce, but it cannot reproduce on its own. It needs a host cell. So once it comes inside of a host, it uses the cell's reproduction system to create more of itself. So it's kind of like a hijacker. It goes in your cell, it steals all your cell's information, and then it makes more of itself. So it can reproduce, it just can't reproduce on its own. Viruses can adapt. They always change depending on their environment. They don't change fast, but they do change. For example, the flu virus changes every year. That's why you need to get a new vaccine every year, because your virus changes every year. Viruses are not cells, nor do they contain cells. Again, a virus is not a cell and it's not made up of cells. Viruses do not have their own energy. They can't make their own energy from using sunlight. They can't get their own energy from eating. They have to steal the energy from the host cell. And also viruses can't respond to a stimuli. They can't move away, they can't flinch. If they sense any danger, they can't do anything about it. Well, they can't sense danger, sorry, they can't sense danger. All right, so those are the 8 characteristics of life. I told you which one the virus has and which one it does not have. Now I need you to tell me, do you think viruses are living? Why or why not? Do you think viruses are living? Good job. No, they're not living. They don't have some of the characteristics of life. No, they're not living because they don't have all the 8 characteristics of life. Good job. They don't have all the 8 characteristics of life. Great answers, guys. So yes, that is the answer. They're not living because they don't have all the 8 characteristics of life. Yes, they don't maintain homeostasis. That's correct. Good job. So remember, in order to be considered living, you need all of the 8 characteristics, not just some of them. You need all of them. Good job. Yes, they cannot reproduce on their own. That is a great answer. All right, so let's go on to the next slide. So let's talk about the structure of a virus. We have 2 different types of viruses. Well, technically we have 3, but I'm only going to focus on these 2. The one on the left is called a bacteriophage. It eats bacteria. The one on the right, this is the more common virus for humans and animals. An example of the one on the right can be the flu. It could also be the coronavirus. Again, on the left, those eat bacteria. On the right, those attack human cells, animal cells, plant cells. All right, so the virus is always going to have a protein coat. It's always going to have a protein coat, and that usually surrounds the DNA. So viruses do have nucleic acids. They do have genetic information. Some have DNA, some only have RNA, but they do have some type of genetic information. And then they're going to have sheaths to help them protect themselves. My bacteriophage on the left is going to have a tail to help it move around. And then they have little suctions. On the right, all of those little spores coming out are suctions. On the left, underneath the bottom part of it, where the tails are, that's a suction. That's where it attaches to the host cell, and that's where it injects its DNA or its RNA. So it's pretty easy to remember. So right now, you are going to write in where the genetic material is, where the tail, where the sheath, and where the protein coat is. Right, Ellie? Good job. Good job. Most of you can tell which one the DNA and RNA is. That's the squiggly lines on the inside. Good job. Yes, C is the sheath. That's where the DNA travels down before it goes into the host cell. Good job on that one. Good job. D is the tells. That's how it moves around. It can float through the empty space in the body, or it can use it to crawl on top of the cells. Good job. Yes, and the top part, A, is the protein coat. That's what surrounds the DNA or the RNA. Good job. Good job. Y'all are doing great. I don't know how y'all figured out how to type the answers, but I am very impressed. Good job, guys. All right, it looks like most of you are already done, so I'm going to go ahead and go to the next slide. Good job, everybody. All right, so I want to talk about a few things before I show this video. So keep in mind that viruses are very small. They're very small, extremely small. They're smaller than an animal and a plant cell. They're even smaller than bacteria cells. And that's because they attach to those cells. They have to be small enough to sneak in and attack those cells. And because they're so small, they're larger in quantity. So there's a lot more virus structures than there are actual cells. All right, I think that's all I needed to say that I forgot to say.
A war
I'm gonna fast
has been
forward
raging
this.
for billions of years, more than genetic material in a hull, and they specialize. Usually, a phage has chosen one specific bacteria and maybe some of its very close relatives. These are its prey.
So a bacteriophage, like I said, eats bacteria. It attaches itself to it. I'm sorry, it doesn't eat it. It uses bacteria. It attacks bacteria. It attaches itself to it and it makes copies of itself. So this video clip right here is going to show you exactly how it makes copies of itself. If you want to watch the whole video, it's inside of your notes that I posted for today. But again, right now, I'm only showing you how it reproduces.
Imagine a phage as like a cruise missile that only hunts and kills members of one very unlucky family. When a phage finds its victim, it connects its tail fibers with receptors and uses a sort of syringe to puncture the surface. In a weird motion, the phage squeezes its tail and injects its genetic information. Within minutes, the bacteria is taken over. It's now forced to manufacture all the parts of new phages. They only stop when the bacteria is filled up with brand new phages. In the final step, they produce endolysin, a powerful enzyme that punches a hole in the bacteria. The pressure is so high that the bacteria sort of vomits out all of its insides and dies. New phages are released and begin the cycle anew.
So what the virus does is it attaches itself to a cell, it injects its DNA or its RNA, depending on what it has, and then it uses the cell's machines to make copies of itself, to reproduce itself. So inside of the cell, it's making copies of a virus. It doesn't know when to stop. It just keeps going and going and going, and pretty soon the cell's going to burst open and it's going to release all those viruses that it made. Well, when all those viruses are free, then they're going to attach themselves to another cell, and they're just going to keep repeating it all over again until the body or the host dies, or the body or the host can fight it off, depending on how strong the immune system is. So viruses are a lot like bacteria. They do both infect the body, they do both infect other organisms, but a bacteria is a prokaryote, so it's alive. A virus is not alive. They both contain genetic material, whether that's DNA or RNA. They both contain genetic material, but a virus does not have ribosomes. A virus does not have cytoplasm. So it's not exactly like bacteria, but it is similar. Bacteria can be fought off with antibiotics, but a virus can't. A virus can only be helped with a vaccine. A vaccine doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be immune to the virus. It just tells your body this is how you kill the virus. Again, viruses are not living. They can't reproduce on their own. A bacteria can. A bacteria can continue to reproduce over and over again because a bacteria does not need a host cell. A virus does. Examples of viruses can be HIV and the flu. Bacteria examples can be E. coli, strep, staph. And I guess those are the only differences between the two. Is your hand up like you have a question?
Yes.
Okay.
So could you theoretically, like, because if bacteriophages aren't harmful to cells and they're just harmful to bacteria, could you theoretically use them to kill bacteria if you got sick with them?
Oh my God, yes. I love that you asked that question. Yes. So I want y'all to go back and watch this video, especially the end, because that's what it talks about. Maybe I can fast forward
Have
it.
to give up their resistance to antibiotics. We might.
So this video at the end is saying that basically because humans take medicine and Tylenol for everything, every time you get sick, every time you feel a fever or a chill, you take antibiotics, you take a pill, you take a Tylenol, you take a Motrin, you take an Advil. Because of that, our body is not fighting off bacteria as well as it should. So just like Zion said, we can essentially use bacteriophages to help us kill the really bad bacteria. If you haven't heard of staph infection yet, it's a bacteria you get when you're in the hospital, and there is no cure for it right now. We have no antibiotics that can cure a staph infection. Your body has to fight it off or it can kill you. It's one of the deadliest infections you could get when you're in the hospital. And you usually get it because, well, you'll see in this video.
This has already been successfully tested with a patient who had no other hope left. The bacteria Pseudomonas aeruginosa, one of the most feared bacteria, infected the man's chest cavity. They are naturally resistant to most antibiotics and can even survive in alcoholic hand gel. After years of suffering, a few thousand phages were directly inserted into his chest cavity together with antibiotics the bacteria were immune to. After a few weeks, the infections had completely disappeared. Unfortunately, this treatment is still experimental.
All right, so yes, it's still experimental, but the reason why it cured the man is because the bacteriophage only eats certain bacteria. So if you program it, genetically engineer it to only eat the bad bacteria, well, you're going to be healed because the virus is going in and it's killing off all of your bad bacteria, only leaving the good bacteria behind. I'm really glad you brought that up, Zion. Thank you. And yes, Ryan, that is what phage therapy is. Good job. It is very hard to do because you do have to genetically make the virus only eat the bad bacteria. You only want to make sure it's eating the bad bacteria, not your good bacteria. Because remember, in your stomach and your intestines, you have bacteria that helps break down your food. So you want to keep those, but you want to get rid of the bad bacteria. So these are some other common viruses. HIV, hopefully you've heard about this in health class. It does lower your immune system, so you're prone to get more infections. There's no cure, but it's treatable with medicine. And when I say treatable, I mean it keeps it from progressing more. You're always going to have it. It's never going to go away. But the treatments help prevent it from exceeding. The flu, most of you do get your flu shots. Some of you have never gotten the flu. Great job. Keep staying healthy. But this is a respiratory illness. Chickenpox, measles, mumps, and rubella. Thank goodness we have vaccines for these. But these really did affect children a lot back in the day. I know most of you have never had the chickenpox, But when I was born, the vaccine wasn't really well known, so I did not get the chickenpox vaccine, and I had chickenpox when I was a kid. Did anybody else have chickenpox? It itches like crazy. Think about 100 mosquito bites all over your body. That's how it feels. And you can't scratch them because then you get scars. And then finally, the coronavirus.
The large S glycoproteins are used by the virus to gain entry to human cells. They attach to receptors on the cell membrane. This binding convinces the cell that the viron is not a threat, allowing the virus entry. The exact mechanism for this is not known. Possibly the virus binds with the human cell's membrane, releasing its contents into the cytoplasm. Alternatively, as shown here, the human cell ingests the virus in a process known as endocytosis. Once inside the cytoplasm, the endosome opens to reveal the virus's genetic material, a single-stranded RNA. The virus hijacks the cell's machinery to replicate the RNA and N proteins, and uses the endoplasmic reticulum to form its M protein outer layer, and the all-important S protein. After replication, the virus is carried by the Golgi bodies out of the cell in a process known as exocytosis, so that it can infect other cells. Meanwhile, the stress of viral production on the endoplasmic reticulum eventually leads to apoptosis, or cell death. It should be noted that the mechanism of action for 2019 novel coronavirus is unknown. However, scientists in China have sequenced the genome, while others have used the sequencing to visualize the structure.
So again, that's the coronavirus. There is another video I have posted in your notes. You can go ahead and watch that later if you want to learn more about the coronavirus, but I'm pretty sure you've had enough of that in your life already. So go ahead and fill out these blanks. All right, hopefully you've got all of them right. I'm going to give you 1 more minute to finish up. All right, so viruses are non-living. They are smaller and simpler in structure than even the simplest prokaryotic cells. Remember, prokaryotic is bacteria. Like living organisms, viruses contain genetic instructions. A virus consists of nucleic acids, DNA or RNA, and the DNA and RNA is enclosed in a protein coat, a sheath, and a tail. All right, so good job, everybody. Go ahead and do your assignment for today. Stay on if you have any questions. If not, you're free to go.